How we can integrate that with ham for Thanksgiving, ham radio. Yeah. Anyway, good evening to everybody. This was a bigger turnout than expected, but then again, I thought I'd have all of 10 downloads of the W3DJS Raspberry Pi version 2.0. Anyway, let me just get a little bit of feel for who's got what here. How many people own one Raspberry Pi at least? How many people own? That's pretty good. How many people own more than one Raspberry Pi? Almost the same number. So we've got a pretty good turnout here. So how many people got the Raspberry Pi just for this workshop? Okay, not that lucky. Or one? Did we get one? Awesome. So the image that I put together, in my past life, I was a software engineer, and then most recently I've been doing DevOps engineering, which is kind of the crossroads between software engineering and operations in the computer field, in the IT field. And putting together this image falls squarely in the types of stuff that I do actually for my day job. Although the difference is that I put this image together by hand rather than automating it, which I'm going to probably do for the 3.0 image, and also make one particular change to it. How many of you have actually tried the W3DJS image so far? And did you have trouble with the Wi-Fi part? Yeah? There's a very simple fix to that, and probably one of the very first things I should show is exactly how to fix that. I shipped it with an auto hotspot thinking people wouldn't want to run it in the field, and some people do, but that number is actually so small compared to the number of people who just want to run it on their desktop at home. So I figured wrong for that particular part, and it's working correctly as intended, but the intention probably doesn't fit reality very much. So anyhow, let me get my mouse up here and close up this document here so we have plenty of space on the screen. With the image that I have, with the image that I have, you can see that this is in the upper right hand corner. We're connected to the Wi-Fi. That's because I went ahead and did two specific steps. And let's see if I can get the terminal window opened up here. Open it very simply just by clicking on it once. And I'm going to make this font as large as I can get it here.
Shift, Control, plus, blow that thing up.
Okay.
There you go.
Hey, that's much better.
Well, that's a
Okay, much better. Thank you very much. I did not know that shortcut. Okay. So the first thing you do is when you open up the terminal window here, this is like any Linux computer. So if you have experience with Linux, you already have a good start here. If you don't, I'll go step by step. The first thing here to do is type sudo space -s, and what that does is it gives you super user access to the computer. It gives you control over everything. And then the things that I did is I edited one file to remove a single line out of it, and unfortunately I don't have the line in there anymore. But on the image, you know what? Let me give you the right editor here that you guys would probably want to use. Let me run Nano instead of VI because I'm used to VI.
VI's fine.
So
Well, the font is bigger, so that helps.
it does help, doesn't it? I can even read it from here. So at the very bottom of the file was right below this little thing here. These are commented out lines. There was some text referring to the WPA _supplicant. You just remove those from the file, and go ahead and hit save, which is Control X for exit. And then if you actually changed it, Control X, save modified buffer, you hit Y for yes, and then just hit return. Don't change the name of the file or anything. And that's the first step. The second step is running sudo system control disable auto hotspot.service. And what that does is it does pretty much what it says literally, is it disables the service by removing an internal link in the file system. But it's already been removed on here. And then once you've done that, you have your you pretty much got your Wi-Fi back. So what you want to do then is run raspi-config, select network options, select Wi-Fi, and then you can go ahead and enter in your Wi-Fi SSID, which here is EAA690 with no password. And that's actually going to go ahead and reconnect to the Wi-Fi. And that's all you have to do. Once you've done that, it's saved. You're good to go for the rest of the time.
You might want to put that out as an email.
I'll send that out as an email after the. So let me go ahead and shrink this up. Oh.
The image that is being configured tonight, does that have those changes in it? Or?
The image that you guys have does not have these changes. So I'll send the email out after. I'll send the email out to the Guardian Reflector afterwards with the instructions, and you guys can go ahead and follow them, and then you'll have your Wi-Fi back. Me at home, I plugged this in. I plugged this into an Ethernet jack. So honestly, I didn't even realize it was a problem until the complaints started rolling in. And I apologize about that, but you know, it's free software.
Are you still getting requests for solutions?
I'm still getting a few people saying, yeah, what's going on here, and it's kind of like a frequently asked question number one. So I'm going to go ahead and close up this terminal, and we're going to get to some of the good stuff. So, how many of you all, when you first started, very beginning of ham radio, you can remember that? I have trouble remembering it. Started off with a handy-talkie, and what you wanted to do with a handy-talkie is you wanted to be able to listen to stuff, and you wanted to you found out about repeaters, and you wanted to program in a repeater list. Well, this image comes with a programming software called Chirp, which you probably used on the PC or Mac or other Linux boxes. And I'll show you that this runs right out of the box. Do you mind holding that? So just have a standard program. Just have a standard programming cable right here. It's USB on one end, and then the two-prong connector for the radio on the other end. Okay, just need to make sure I plug this in all the way. I had trouble with this earlier today when it was not actually plugged in securely. And this plugs right into the Pi on the top. And I'll turn this on. And then I will go and launch. Thank you. And then I'll go ahead and launch Chirp off the ham radio menu. Okay, there's Chirp. And we want to go to the download from radio to start off. Now, I've already selected these when I tried this out earlier. For the vendor, I've got Baofeng. I'm sure there's plenty of people with Baofeng radios here, but there's also Yaesus and Nicoms and everything else on here. And this is the VF F8HP. And the key thing to remember here is the port you need to use. Typically, it's going to be /dev/tty USB 0. And if you all want to write that down, that's a good thing to remember. If you have questions about it later, feel free to ask me on the mailing list. I'm very responsive. So on the pop-up, it's going to show you a couple selections, but you want USB 0 when this is the only thing plugged in. And I hit OK. And it gives us a warning about it being an experimental driver. Just hit yes for proceed. And then it wants it turned on with the volume up all the way. And it says cloning, and you can see the progress bars coming across here. So we'll just give it a couple of seconds. I actually programmed in just a bunch of the local repeaters on this in no particular order, just from what downloaded off of radioreference.com or repeaterbook.com, one of those sites. And there you go. There's the list. There's the list of channels. So I don't think this needs to be so much of a tutorial on Chirp. If you've used Chirp before on the PC, you can use it on the Raspberry Pi. It's the same interface. It works exactly the same. The only thing to mention here is that the version of Chirp that's shipped with the Raspberry Pi image that I created is getting older and older. They will, of course, introduce new radios, and Chirp will actually tell you at some point whether or not you need to update it. And when it does, feel free to go through the steps to update that software. Any questions about this part? Larry?
When's the website that you download that film and that will be compiled and all that good stuff? If you're going to add,
So I think I downloaded a pre-compiled version of Chirp with the Raspberry Pi, but they do have source code, and you can compile it from the source code. Whatever works for you. I mean, frankly, what I ship right now is going to work with 99% of the radios you're going to run into. I mean, you'd have to have an absolutely brand new radio for Chirp to not work with this image. Now, give this image 2 years, then maybe there'll be new radios it doesn't support. But hopefully by then I'll have version 3 of the image with a newer version of Chirp.
Does Raspbian, like other distributions, does it use Debian files, or how does it normally load applications?
So you're asking how Raspbian Linux loads applications?
Is it like Debian or something that another distribution?
So Raspbian Linux is actually Debian compiled for the ARM processor on the Raspberry Pi, and then there's additional packages loaded on to give it the specific the specific look for the Raspberry Pi. But it is very much Debian at the core.
So you can get a DEB file, double click it, and it'll update.
Yes. So the question is, can you get a Debian DEB package and install it on the Pi? The answer is yes, as long as it's an ARM Debian image, a Debian package. If it's a Debian package for the Intel processor, for like a PC, that won't work.
So you got to be careful where you're getting your stuff.
Well, it won't willy-nilly install the wrong platform image. It's going to tell you that and stop.
But you have to go find it. It may not be readily available for ARM processors as much as.
Yes, you have to look around for the Raspberry Pi specific. And actually, a lot of the major programs for a lot of the major software for the ham radio community has versions for the Pi already. So you don't have to look too hard, fortunately.
Done.
Next question. Okay, so moving on from Chirp. I guess a quick show of hands. How many people want to see FL Digi first, or the next part will be how many people want to see WSJTX. So how many people want to see FL Digi first?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter? Okay, let's bring up FL Digi. So again, the way I set this up is that, and this was actually a little hard to do because the menus are very resistant to changing under the Raspberry Pi, but I was able to enable the ham radio menu on this. And let's go ahead and launch FL Digi. It's going to be the same look, and here you see I haven't even configured it at all. It's starting from the very beginning, so I click on Next, and it's going to want a station call sign.
Dave, will you
Enlarge that, Dave?
I'm good.
Okay.
Question?
You want to enlarge that?
I'm not sure you can.
I'm not sure I can enlarge that. You come up closer if you want.
Control plus. Try that.
I don't think that's going to work for that window.
You have an application called Zoom?
No, I don't have Zoom installed.
All right, don't worry about it.
So, but anyway, the setup of FL Digi is going to be pretty much the same way as it is on the PC. So let's see how little let me get by with here. Okay, so devices, we're going to go ahead next on this. The special thing for the Raspberry Pi is that your devices, your audio devices that you can set up here are going to be slightly different than what you see on the PC. And you just have to be aware, you need to be aware of that. So we're going to go ahead and hit next here. And this is, it's got FL rate support for this built in. We're just going to go ahead and click next past this. And then it's got the some of the some of the data sources. We're just going to go ahead and hit finish on this and wrap it all up. And you see here we got FL Digi running with the primary interface. With your radios, you're going to plug in your radios like you would on a modern PC. With like your ICOMs or your modern ICOMs and Yaesus and Kenwoods, the ones that have USB ports, you're going to want to plug the USB port into the Pi and make sure that you're addressing that correct port on the Pi. I've set this up with the ICOM 7300 because that's what I've got, and it runs just fine through /dev/tty USB 0, which is what we use for Chirp for the programming cable. If you have more than one thing programmed in, they're going to be USB 0, USB 1, etc., etc. And you have to be aware of that. So with FL Digi, this is the same interface that you're used to on the PC. So there's really no surprise here. It just works. It works with FL Rig. You can use it also with Hamlib. So whatever interface you want to your radio is going to work. The trick is getting the radio hooked up into the Pi. So USB is very easy when you're dealing with older radios and there's like a serial interface, or you're dealing with like a signal link. Fortunately, the signal link is a USB sound card, so it can plug into this as well.
You have to enable. Vaguely remember that you have to enable something before you can use a serial port or a USB port.
Let me show you that. This is something I've already done with the image.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about some of the things I've been through.
Yeah, I've already done a lot of behind the scenes stuff to just make the stuff magically work. But let me show you here.
You want to repeat the question, so
Now, he understands what I said better than I can explain it.
Well, we can't hear.
yeah, nobody else can hear it.
Okay. Well,
Point blank. All the way.
in Linux, you usually have to enable some ports to work, and it's when you first start out, it takes a while to learn. I've learned, but I'm going to let you explain.
Yes, so there are some certain steps you've got to take to enable serial port or USB port networking. So I'm going to go in here with the large text to the /dev area of the file system, and I'm going to look at the TTY, USB, and then star to match all of them, which we're just going to have one. And what we see here is a single file TTY USB 0. The trick is here, I don't have enough time to give a whole Linux primer on this, but I can give you all a little bit of insight on this. If you have detailed questions, just come to me after the presentation, or come to me on the mailing list, and I'll be happy to answer those questions in detail. But on this particular one, TTY USB 0, it belongs to what's known as a group, and the group is called dial-out. And if I look at the members of the group dial-out, sorry, it's a little slow typing with one hand. On this, the group dial-out has 3 members. It's got Pi, which is the current user we are, and that's what makes the magic happen. Adding Pi to the dial-out group enables FL Digi, enables WSGTX, enables Chirp, it enables everything that communicates out the USB port for the Pi user. Now, if you want to set up a different user instead of Pi, maybe you want to, maybe you want to call it Bob. Well, Bob would be a new user, and then Bob would have to be added into the group for dial out, and it would work for them.
Okay. So that you
you set up Pi for us, or so if we were to do this on our own, we would have to set up our current user. So
Yes.
you just did it for us.
Yeah, so I did this already on the W3DJS image, so you don't have to worry about it. But you're welcome to. There's nothing stopping you from creating your own ham radio image or your own configuration. In which case, you'll have to do these steps that I did manually yourself to make them work. Okay. So let's do something a little fun here. What I've got up here, and of course I'm sure we're going to get great reception being inside this big metal box here. I have an SDR Play RSP2. They're now discontinued, but it's a very good workhorse with and a little makeshift antenna here made out of a paper clip. I know that's going to receive so well. That's actually already plugged into the Pi, and the same W3DJS image has support for a number of different SDRs. It's got support for those little $25 RTL SDR dongles that you can buy off of Amazon. Yeah, like they're 25 bucks. Or something that's a little bit more expensive, like the SDR Play or the AirSpy is supported. So many different SDRs are already supported by the image. And in which case, we can actually launch a couple of different programs here to make use of the SDR. And what I'm going to right now, under ham radio, is Cubic SDR, which is actually my program of choice. There's also GQRX, which runs and it's just got its own different interface. But in Cubic SDR, when it comes up, it gives us a list of sources right here, and one is pulse audio, which you can actually input radio through the through the audio interface on the device. Or in this particular case, I can select the SDR Play and use the default parameters, and then go ahead and click Start for this. And what we got going on is a waterfall, and I've got this tied into the strongest radio source I know of, which is the FM commercial band right here. And I don't have any sound output for the Pi, unfortunately, but what I can do is at least click on one of the stronger signals here. If I can find the mouse. And then I'm sorry, I think we're getting sound.
Yeah, the top shelf is the remote, and you can turn the volume up.
I forgot we can get the sound through the HDMI. So we got one of the FM commercial stations right here. So these are 200 kilohertz wide signals. So 99.7. I'm not sure which station that is. I listen to the River actually, and also Clark University for their jazz. So
To change frequency, if you wanted to go up into the VHF area for like the aircraft, you need a different run in there or same thing?
well, we would probably want a more appropriate antenna to receive VHF signals. The FM is so strong it's just going to come off the paper clip. But when I'm at home, I have a Diamond X50 antenna that I use, and I plug that in. It's got VHF and UHF support, and I'm able to tune in very easily. With this, let me see if I can click on the right part here. If you click under View Rates right here, these are built in. These aren't configured off of my system. These are actually built in. And I'm sorry, they do not have 2 meters plugged in. They do have 10 meters though. 10 meters through 160 here. But I guarantee you that you can go ahead and knock this up in frequency. And yeah, we're just picking up garbage right now. So, but anyway, but yeah, you can tune it very easily just by clicking on these numbers right here, or you can go ahead and click on different parts of the waterfall. Or you can have bookmarks to tune it. There's actually many different ways to tune this. But again, this isn't really a discussion on Cubic SDR. It's just that you can do these things with the Raspberry Pi.
Question. How many USB ports does the Raspberry Pi?
That varies from model to model. So this is a Raspberry Pi 0W, which is one of the smallest ones. that they make. The 0 and the 0W are almost identical, with the exception of the W is the wireless model. The 0 is unfortunately not very good for most ham radio apps because it does not have an Ethernet interface on it, and if it doesn't have wireless, then you have to do some sort of TCP/IP over USB, which is that's kind of a pain to deal with. So, but this is actually I picked this up from Micro Center for $15. I'm sure it's available on Amazon or Element 14 or Element 13, whatever the website's called, for the same amount of money. I think this can actually run the W3DJS image, except for this is very limited on memory. This has 1/8 of the memory of the Raspberry Pi 4. So this has 2 USB ports on it. The Raspberry Pi 2, I think has, I think that one might actually have, is it 2 USB ports in the 2? 4? I know the Raspberry Pi 3 and the 4 both have 4 ports on them. So, but it's been a while since I've used the 2.
The original only had 2.
The original one only had 2. Thank you, David.
And I assume you can plug in a hub.
Yes, and that's what most people do is they plug in a hub.
Power pad.
Yeah, and that was.
You don't need a powered hub if you don't have devices that don't need power, but if they do need power, yes, get that powered hub, because what you'll do is you'll draw down the power on the Raspberry Pi's power supply, and it doesn't like that very much. It's very sensitive.
And remember the 0W, well, it has 2 ports, it really only has 1 because one of them's being power.
That's correct. And the other thing is that it's 1 CPU core. The Raspberry Pi 4 has 4 CPU cores, and the Raspberry Pi 3 has 4 CPU cores. This is 1 core. It runs really slow, and it doesn't have a lot of memory, but it can run. So, but at the low cost of these devices, it's very affordable to get a 4 and have all the bells and whistles from the start. So, pretty much. So let me just go ahead do WSGTX here, or is there any request for any specific type of software?
Well, let's see what you have. Do you have a yeah.
On FLDG, can you use other USB sound cards other than your signal link? Okay.
As long as you have driver support for it, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Do you have a specific one in mind? Yeah, as long as you've got the driver, and there's quite a few developers out there who are very motivated to provide support. I've yet to run into a lot of stuff that can't actually run on the Pi. Most of the problems I have getting software to run on the Pi is because it's too old. It's not because of some feature the Pi doesn't have. It's simply because they're compiled against software libraries which are 10 and 15 years old, and I can't find them anymore. But I mean, what we've got available on here, we've got ham test tutorials on here. We've got CW Morse code applications on here. We've got software. We have the entire FLDigi suite from W1HJ. Did I get that? HKJ. And we have WSJTX. We've got the SDR software. We even have software in here for downloading NOAA weather satellite information. So if you actually have one of those QFH antennas, and you've got that plugged into your rig and plugged into the Pi, you can receive the weather maps from NOAA 19 and NOAA 15 and whatever the satellite numbers are. You can actually receive that stuff. So this is a very capable image. So, here's an area that's sometimes overlooked. Satellite users. There is an application called gPredict on here, which you may have already used on the PC. It's available on the Pi, and what you do is you can actually see when different satellites are going to be over the U.S. Or say for example you're in Australia, you can find them when they're over Australia, or whatever country you're in. And the interface is very much similar to the PC.
What do you use for logging?
Logging software. What do I use for logging? You can run, the most advanced logging software I've seen for Linux is called CQR log. It's kind of hard to learn, but once you overcome the learning curve, it's extremely easy to use. But this image comes with 4 or maybe 5 different logging softwares. So let's try one of those. I'm going to look for PyQso, and it's on here somewhere. I might have to launch it from the command prompt, which is fine. This is not necessarily the preferred way to start it up, but this is one way to start it up. And PyQso is some built-in logging software. Created a logbook right here, and we're just going to call this the test logbook. And oh, we do not want to save it here. Let's save it on the desktop. That's safe. And then I have actually not used PyQso, so I'm not sure of the interface. It does have add record, but it's actually dimmed out for whatever reason.
Okay, so it's something you have to learn.
Yeah, so I think this is good. Oh, new log. Okay, here we go. We can add log records right in here, so we can put in call signs, date, time, frequencies, all that fun stuff. So PyQso is obviously its own application. It actually has mapping software built into it, because I know, because I had to actually construct PyQso to load onto the Pi. I just didn't actually use it. But it does have the ability to plot your QSOs over a map of the Earth and see where you made contact and so forth.
Connect
It's
to the
a nice
rig?
little feature.
Will it connect to your rig?
Maybe.
Maybe.
That is for you to experiment with and find out. I do
What
know
was the
that does it connect to your rig, and I don't know about PyQso, but CQR log most certainly does. So
Sorry, I'm not quick enough for the microphone.
okay,
Or Steve talks.
Earl.
Just how many programs for use on the Raspberry Pi do you have on your image here?
The ham radio applications, somewhere between 50 and 100.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
There's more stuff that I keep track of. Yes, sir.
So I was wondering, with the applications that you uploaded, some of them require some customization with your call sign, and some require some customization with parameters to talk to a radio, like sure, you have to
Yes.
pick the USB port. So is there any other configuring that any of the other programs need that I haven't already mentioned?
No, that's pretty much it. Most of the applications are going to just be putting your call sign, maybe a grid square, your ITU zone, things like that you're kind of used to entering already. And then you have to worry about configuring the rig for the Raspberry Pi. The only other thing I can think of is that the serial port, I'm sorry, not the serial port, the sound part on the Pi is referenced differently than it is on another Linux computer, and way differently than it is from Windows or Macs. But it works primarily the same way, it's just named differently. So you just have to be aware of that. That's the most complicated part about that. There's also a bunch of tutorials online from a fellow ham, Jason, KM4ACK. He does a lot of stuff with the Pi, but the thing is, a lot of things he does with the Pi is already pre-configured on this image. But the actual usage of the software at the end of his videos very much applies here.
So he has a YouTube channel?
Yes. Yeah, Jason, KM4ACK. So I'll email out that after the thing. But anyway, I can continue showing different apps here. Is there anything people want to see specifically, or do you want to go into breakout sessions?
WSJTX.
So I
WSJTX.
Oh, WSGTX. Let's do that. So to get to WSJTX, Raspberry Pi menu, and radio menu, scroll all the way to the bottom. And WSJTX is right there, right above Zasker.
You have them in alphabetical order.
The operating system puts them in alphabetical order, yes. And I have actually run WSJTX here, which you wouldn't normally get when you first started up is a little splash dialog, which I've already dismissed. I'm going to hit OK. We're going to actually hit cancel here and start up one more time. It's complaining because it's not hooked up to the rig. I didn't want to drag the rig over just for, I didn't want to drag my 7300 over just for one app. So let's launch it again here. File, settings, and this, I've plugged in my call sign, my grid square, all the same things you do on all the same things you're going to do on the PC. For radio here, it's the same list you'll see on the PC or Mac. In this particular case, I've selected the ICOM 7300 from the list. I run mine in 19.2. You see, and all the defaults are the same over here. We use cat control for push and talk method. The mode is data, and the split operation, I've only ever found fake it works reliably on the 7300. Whereas it would be nice if rig actually works. Now to make this work while I don't have the rig hooked up, it's pretty easy. You just select none for the rig, and turn off the push to talk. Now with this particular mode, you think, well, this is kind of useless. Well, it's actually not entirely useless. What you can do under the settings is you can select different audio input ports. So if you have, instead of a rig, maybe you use the SDR Play here. If you install other software, which is well beyond this talk, there are virtual audio ports available, like virtual audio cable for the PC. You've got that available for Linux as well, and you can actually route the audio from GQRX into WSJTX as an audio port, and you can decode packets coming through. Yes, question?
Yes, so I have a dumb question for you. Last week, Ray talked to us about remote hams. Is there a way for you to have a Raspberry Pi at home connected to your 7300 with a VPN server, and then have a Raspberry Pi out in the field connect tunneling through the internet with VPN to your Raspberry Pi at home and run the apps? Well, I don't know, I guess run the apps in either place and have, connect up your laptop, or you don't need a laptop, I'm sorry, connect up a display, keyboard, mouse, and run any of the digital modes remotely with your radio at home.
It's not just possible, I've done it.
That's
Oh.
what MFJ is selling right now.
I'm sorry?
That's what MFJ is selling for the remote
True.
over here.
Well, this is available on a shoestring budget here, and in fact, I have this working just fine at home. Trying to run it over the EAA 690, it might cooperate, it might not. So let's give this a try. Let me go to my other laptop.
Yeah, I don't think we have a lot of bandwidth here, and I'm sure a lot of people are connected, so.
We can give you a hotspot if you need.
Yeah, Dave, there's a few people with hotspots, if that would help.
Yeah, it's trying to connect, but it can't see the Pi for right. It saw it earlier because I've got the thumbnail of the screen showing that I'm not. Oh, it's went offline. That explains why I can't reach it. Let's see about fixing this.
The Pi went offline, so that's why we're having an issue. So yeah, I was more just wondering if it was possible. You didn't have to
There's no
go.
Wi-Fi over here. This is LTE.
Okay, it doesn't see any Wi-Fi right now. Thank you. Let's go back to setting this up again.
When in doubt, start it up again.
Pretty much.
When all else fails, reboot.
Yeah, there was a TV show, British TV show, where the guy just was like, you try turning it off and on again. That's how he answered the phone.
Well, it works for Moore's Landers.
I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and restart the Pi.
When you
This will-
5 minutes.
This will take about
Yeah, no, but
1 minute. Yeah, we're about ready to wrap it up.
When you get home, would you mind you've got a lot of software there, which you're on the Pi, if I want to run it on my Linux machine at home, can you give us a list of your software that we can go look at and maybe decide we like?
Yeah, I actually sent out a copy of the list to the I sent out a copy of the listing of software to the mailing list before. I can send it again.
yeah, I guess
And,
I have to find
It's
it.
divided into multiple sections, like the FL Digi Suite. I guess it's going to reboot when it decides to. So the SDR applications and the like.
You got some sort of error message popping up on your screen here,
Oh, I did not see that.
laptop.
on your laptop.
Oh, that's because you can't connect to the Pi. Question.
You sent that list out, is it possible on the menu on the Raspberry Pi, you can create multiple entries there and break them out into that instead of grouping all under?
So it's not one big scrolling list, maybe.
Maybe for version 3,
Yeah.
I can take a look at that. That's a good suggestion.
So one thing while you're just dealing with that, so groups.io. Do you know that you can go to the website, go to our group, ours, and then from there, the search works really well. So you could just put in Raspberry, and it will show you all the messages that have the keyword Raspberry in them for Raspberry Pi. And it keeps all the messages going back, not just from groups.io, but back from our Yahoo groups. All that got converted. So there's a whole bunch of history there. If you want to find an email that somebody sent 5-10 years ago, it's there.
Of course, we've probably had 100 Raspberry Pi emails in the last couple of weeks, so sorting through them could be a problem.
Well, that's easy. You just go all the way to the bottom and find the first one. Or you put in W3DJS space Raspberry, and then you only get 150.
Yeah, search using my call sign. You'll get it much more easily that way.
Did the list on QRZ, left in the forum, the QRZ forum?
I did make one post.
It's on.
No, I turned it off. So I did make one post to QRZ announcing it. Unfortunately, it did not hit the front page. That's okay though. It's there for the searching, and I should be able to give this another try on the networking. I've got a VNC client set up here, and there we go. So I can drive the Raspberry Pi just like I'm right there on the screen.
So you're doing this from your laptop right now, not using the Raspberry Pi mouse.
Yeah, this is my laptop mouse. This is my Raspberry Pi mouse, and best not get them confused. So anyway, any other questions?
So you're just using remote desktop and
I got one.
Yeah, what is the power consumption of a typical Raspberry Pi, like version 3 or version 4? How much power does it require, and can you use that for can you feed power to it for a long distance, say through Ethernet or something like that?
The Raspberry Pi uses about 5 watts for models 1, 2, and 3. It's slightly more than that for the Raspberry Pi 4. I've never tried sending power over Ethernet or any other means long distance. I would recommend you to talk to some of the folks with some of the online forums and ask them that question. Because I'm sure there's some crazy person who's done that.
The Model 4 started to include it, but you have to get the have to have the completion of it and support the fully in the Model 4.
And was the Raspberry Pi 4 included?
Power line, not really.
Power over Ethernet? Okay, that's good.
The little hat you sit on top of it, you some of the pins with GIO, and it's the 3B plus and 4.
Yeah, there's actually multiple ways to power the Pi. I've got it plugged in right now to a wall wart. You can plug it into a USB power pack. That works fine as long as as long as you don't have like a hat installed on it. It's just not enough juice for driving a hat too. It's enough to run just a Pi. And the Pi 4 is definitely more hungry for power, more hungry for juice. You can also power it. You can also power the Raspberry Pi two other ways. One is using the GPIO pins, and there's a whole bunch of them on one row. And then, and of course, I mentioned the power of Ethernet before. There is actually a third way, and it is unfortunately slipping my mind right now. But there is actually a third way to power the Pi. Any other questions?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dave.